Right now, you might be drunk, about to drink, or holding a bottle without realizing what it really is. Because that drink in your hand is not just beer, wine, or alcohol. It is a 10-million-year-old survival signal your body still remembers. Long before humans invented cups, cities, farming, or writing, our ancestors were already chasing the smell of rotting fruit on a forest floor. Not because they wanted to party, because that sharp, sweet smell meant calories, sugar, and life. And hidden inside it was the same chemical people still build entire nights around today: ethanol. To our ancient ancestors, ethanol was not a poison, not a pleasure, not a ritual. It was a clue. It pointed toward food before the food disappeared, and that is where the story really begins. Not with humans sitting around making beer, but with a body learning that the smell of rot could mean survival. Here is the strange part. Your body may have been prepared for alcohol long before humans knew how to make it. Researchers studying alcohol metabolism found that a key enzyme in our ancient ancestors became much better at breaking down ethanol around 10 million years ago. That does not mean they were drinking from cups. It means their bodies were adapting to a world where fermented fruit was part of the menu. This changes the way alcohol looks. It was not just some dangerous chemical humans discovered later. For our ancestors, tiny amounts of ethanol probably came with food. A fruit that had started fermenting was easy to smell. It was soft. It was calorie-rich. And in a forest where food could vanish fast, finding it mattered. So when humans eventually began making alcohol, they were not inventing a desire from nothing. They were taking an ancient attraction and turning it into a tool. Fermentation is basically controlled rot. That sounds disgusting, but it is one of the most useful tricks humans ever learned. Leave fruit, grain, or honey in the right conditions, and invisible organisms start doing the work. Sugar changes, the smell sharpens, the liquid becomes something new. Ancient people did not need microscopes to notice this. They only needed memory. Someone saw fruit change after sitting too long. Someone saw wet grain bubble. Someone mixed honey with water and came back later to find it smelled different. Then came the most important part. They tried to repeat it. That is where alcohol becomes technology, not because people understood chemistry, but because they understood patterns. This ingredient, this container, this much time, this effect. A monkey can eat fermented fruit once. A human can turn that accident into a method. And once a method can be remembered, improved, and shared, it stops being luck. It becomes culture. First major archaeological clue takes us to Reykjavik Cave, near Haifa in modern Israel. About 13,000 years ago, a group called the Natufians used this cave as a burial place. They were not full farmers yet. They hunted, gathered wild plants, and lived right on the edge of the agricultural world. Inside the cave, archaeologists found stone mortars carved into the bedrock. When the residue was studied, it showed traces of wild wheat and barley that had been crushed, soaked, and fermented. That means one of the oldest beer-like drinks we know about was not found in a palace or a tavern. It was found beside the dead. That detail matters. This was probably not casual drinking. It was connected to ritual, memory, and gathering. Imagine firelight on stone walls, people standing near a burial, sharing a drink that made grief feel less private. Food feeds the body. Alcohol can change the mood of the group, and for ancient humans, that may have been the real power. Once alcohol became part of ritual, it could do something very useful. It could help bring people together. That matters because early humans did not live in giant cities. They lived in small groups. Meeting strangers was risky. A stranger could be a trading partner, a marriage connection, or a threat, so humans needed ways to lower tension. Feasts did that. Music did that. Stories did that. A shared drink may have helped too. In southeastern Turkey, hunter-gatherers built huge stone circles long before the kind of cities people once thought were necessary for monuments like that. Archaeologists found large stone vessels there, and some researchers have suggested they may have been used for grain-based drinks. The beer evidence is debated, so we should be careful, but the bigger point still stands. Before permanent cities, humans were already gathering for reasons bigger than food. Ritual came first. Civilization followed later. The clearest ancient recipe comes from Jiahu, a Neolithic village in China. Archaeologists found pottery jars there with chemical traces of a fermented drink made from rice, honey, and fruit. Hawthorn berries were likely involved, and possibly wild grapes too. That is very different from accidentally eating rotten fruit. This was a mixture. Someone chose ingredients. Someone knew the drink would change if it was left alone. They may not have understood yeast, but they understood the result. And Jiahu was not only about food. The same site is famous for ancient bone flutes, some of the oldest playable instruments ever found. So imagine the scene: fire, music, clay jars, a sweet fermented drink passed between people. That is the moment alcohol becomes more than survival. It becomes part of a night people remember. Later in the first cities, alcohol became part of the system. In Mesopotamia, beer appears in some of the oldest written records. In Egypt, it was everywhere. Workers received beer as part of their rations. Temples offered it to gods. Doctors mixed it into medicines. Families drank weaker versions with meals. Ancient beer was not always like the clear drink people imagine today. It could be thick, cloudy, full of grain, and low in alcohol. For many people, it was closer to liquid bread. That made it useful. It carried calories. It could be shared. It turned grain into something people wanted every day. But there was a darker side. If beer is food, payment, medicine, and ritual, then whoever controls the grain and the brewing controls more than a drink. They control labor. They control gatherings. They control what people receive after a long day of work. Alcohol connected people. It also helped organize them. So when did ancient humans start drinking alcohol? The answer depends on what you mean by drinking. Our ancestors were probably drawn to fermented fruit millions of years ago. Their bodies adapted to small amounts of ethanol long before anyone made it on purpose. Later, humans learned to control fermentation. Then they brought it into caves, rituals, burials, villages, temples, and cities. That is the real story. Alcohol was not just discovered one afternoon. It slowly moved from nature into culture. First, it was a smell that pointed to food. Then it became a method, then a ritual, then a recipe, then a payment system, then a tool of religion and power. It did not build civilization by itself. No single drink could do that, but it helped humans do something extremely difficult. It helped strangers gather, loosen their fear, share a story, remember the dead, and feel like they belonged to the same group. And that may be why alcohol never really left us.